Hi there, I'm Eric Chappell, Community Evangelist for InfraWorks 360. Over the past few videos you saw John Sayre establish existing conditions and James Wedding build up the design of our new community. Now that they've got things looking great, I'm going to take on the task of presenting and sharing their work. Let's get started. Let's start with creating a watermark for our model. That way any images or videos that we create will bear the logo of our company. To do that, I'll click on the presentation icon here at the top of my screen, and then in the tools that are available you'll see that there is one called watermarks. I'll simply click that, click the green plus sign, and it's going to ask me to select an image file to serve as the watermark. I'll pick one here called Autodesk Logo that I've kind of prepared for this purpose. Click open, and it brings it in at the default location, which is the top left corner. Now as you can see, that clashes with my icons and such, which doesn't really matter when I'm generating the output, but I would just like it better if it were in a place where I could see it. So I'm going to move it to the bottom left corner, and if I want I can adjust the size. Right now it's at 25%. We can see what 50% looks like. That's pretty big. I think I'll go back down to 25%. You can also adjust the transparency. If I slide it to the right, it becomes nearly invisible. If I slide to the left, then it's shown with no transparency. I think the default was about 25%, which I think looks pretty good. So with that, my watermark is complete, and I can simply close down the watermarks panel. If I wanted to add more watermarks, I could simply click the plus sign and add as many as I like. For the next task, let's say that we want to create a still shot of our project that's going to go into a presentation or a report. That's easy enough to do. I can simply orient my view the way I like, or I can even use a bookmark. And I've already created a few bookmarks in this model. I've got one called Southeast Overview, one called Entrance, and one called Center, where I'm located near the center of the development, kind of looking out over it. Creating a bookmark is easy. You just simply orient your view the way you like. For example, let's say we want to do a northeast overview. We could simply place our viewpoint in the location we like, click the bookmarks drop down, click add new, and then double click the generic bookmark name and enter the name we want. So I'll call this Northeast Overview. And that's how easy it is to create a bookmark. Let's go back to Southeast Overview, and as I was saying earlier, I want to just create a still image of this view. That's as simple as clicking the presentation icon and then clicking the snapshot or create snapshot icon. This brings up this simple dialog where you can choose a location for your file. I'm going to browse to a folder I have called Apple Springs, and I'll call this snapshot 1. I can choose to specify the resolution that I want, or I can just simply use the same viewport resolution that I'm currently seeing on the screen and click save, and just like that the image is saved out. If I bring up the location where that image is, I can double click it and open the image like I would any other, and notice the watermark in the lower left corner, which we created just a few minutes ago. So that's how easy it is to create a snapshot. So what if you want to give someone an animated tour through your model? Well, that's handled through a storyboard, and we'll get started by clicking the storyboard creator icon. A storyboard is a series of animations that are kind of strung together with transitions, and a quick way to show you how it works is to start by inserting a camera path animation. So when I do that, I get a keyframe. This is my first keyframe, and you can see that it matches the view that I'm currently set to. If I pan or zoom or in some way change my view and click the plus sign, it adds another keyframe. And what the storyboard does is it creates transitions from one keyframe to the next. So you can continuously create these keyframes and as a result create an animation. Now what I'd like to do is let the software create these keyframes for me to simulate driving down the road. And to do that, I'll start by selecting the Create from Design Road option and picking a design road in my model. I'm going to pick the long design road that passes through the majority of our development. And you can see that all the keyframes have been automatically created. So now when I press play, it takes me through a nice smooth journey along that road. Now I'd like to get a better view of the development prior to that, so I don't want to start right at the entrance. I want to actually see the entire development and then kind of fly down to the beginning point of the road. So I'll use one of the bookmarks I created, this one called Southeast Overview, to kind of get in position. And now what I'd like to do is create some keyframes that precede the road animation to kind of smoothly transition from where I am now down to the road. So to do that, I'll kind of slide the road down a bit, and I'll grab the blue title bar that says Item 2 and just make some space here. So I'm going to come up here and insert a camera path animation. So I'm going to slide that back to the beginning of my animation. So now I've got the first frame of my animation. Now I'm going to click the first frame of my road animation and click the little bullseye symbol here, and that'll zoom me down to that exact view. Now I'm going to come back again to the camera path animation and click the plus sign. So what I've done is I've created a keyframe here that matches this keyframe to give me a nice smooth transition. Now all that's left to do is to slide this back. I can go a little bit further and it'll snap back so that it meets end to end. Now I should have a nice smooth transition from being far away to where it matches into the road animation. And I'm pretty happy with that. That's what I'm looking for. So now when I get to the end of the animation, let me just zoom out a little bit. I'm going to move my editing line here to the end. And now I'm going to insert a crane animation. Notice I've got a whole list of animations here that I can pick from. So add a crane animation, and what this is going to do is turn, face the ground, and go up. So my distance up right now is set to 3 meters, which isn't very dramatic. I'm going to change that to 1,000 meters, and I'll just give you a look at what's going to happen here. It's going to go up and out. Now that went really quickly, almost dizzying, so I want to make that a little slower. I'll simply change the duration from 3 seconds to 10 seconds, and now that animation is going to be much more manageable. So now I start my animation from far away, I drive down the road, and I finish up from far away. So if I hit the stop button a few times, it takes me back to the beginning. I can play through the whole thing, and I've got a nice, smooth, professional looking animation. I'll go ahead and kind of fast forward us toward the end here. And then when we get to the end of the road, it takes us to that crane animation where we're once again looking at the development from far away. So that's how you can create a storyboard animation. So now that I have my model, and I've even created a storyboard to animate or give someone a tour through the model, I want to share this with some folks. And you know, I can go into the storyboard creator and I can actually export a video file from there and share that file, but I want something a little more eloquent. I want to use the cloud to share my model. So the first thing I'll do is I want to carve out some of my model and actually publish it eventually to the web for sharing. And to do that, I need to create what's called a scenario. So I'm going to click the scenario browser icon, and you'll notice I've already created one previously called Apple Springs 2 scenario. I'm going to create another one, and what I'll do is I'll click the plus sign, and that brings up the scenario editor asset card. So this one I'm going to call Apple Springs 3, and the next task will be to choose the area of interest. Now I can define the area of interest using a shape like a bounding box or a polygon, or if I've got a fairly small model, which this is, I can just go ahead and use the entire model. But keep in mind that if I wanted to, I could just carve out maybe a phase or only show the developed area. But in this case, I want to go ahead and show all the context around it as well, so I'll use entire model. Another thing I can do is include a storyboard with my scenario. And we've got the one that we created just a minute ago, which flies us into the main road and drives us down the road and then flies back out again. So why not include that storyboard so that the people that we share this with can also experience that animation? So that covers the scenario editor. My changes have been saved as I go, and that's all ready to go. Notice it says out of sync. That's because it hasn't been published yet. Now if this is the first time you're publishing the model, this will look a bit different, but in this case John and James have already published and made changes and updated the cloud version of the model. So what I'm actually doing now is syncing my changes. So when I do this, when I bring up the sync dialog, I've got the ability to create scenarios and web views in the web. And as we now know, I have a scenario. It's called Apple Springs 3, and I've got an old scenario from before called Apple Springs 2. I'll click sync and then give the software the time it needs to go ahead and sync those changes up to the cloud version of the model. So after publishing my changes or syncing my changes, I wait a few minutes, and before long I get a notification email that says that my model has published successfully. And if I scroll down, I even see a link to view the web version of the model. So I'll go ahead and click that, and notice that from now on I'm in a browser window. So that means anyone with a link to this model can do what I'm doing. You don't have to have InfraWorks 360 to do what I'm doing. So think about that when it comes to sharing your work with other stakeholders in the project. So from here I see a view of the model. If I click this 3D marker, it takes me to the scenario that I published. So I'll go ahead and click that scenario icon, and this is a fully navigable model of the scenario that I published. And notice that it responds in detail as I zoom in, and it's optimized for performance. So that's why I see more detail as I zoom in close to the model. And again, I want to give someone a tour through the model. I want to give them a look at what I'm thinking with this design, and I can even share with them my storyboard. So I can click the storyboard icon, click play, and it will take them through that same storyboard experience that I created a few minutes ago. And again, I will stress that I'm in just a web browser right now. You can see the Autodesk watermark at the bottom left corner. Of course, this can be your company logo or whatever image you want to put in its place. But this is a great way for someone to share the model and kind of show people where you're at in the design, give them a look at the design, and make decisions on whether they want to proceed with what they see or make changes to it. So this is the power of being able to share through scenarios, storyboards, and the use of the cloud.